information security, information risk management. So the key thing here is active participation. This is a great opportunity for you guys to obviously participate. Now this month, of course, we're having a panel debate. You're all end user security professionals. That's the one thing with the rant is that we don't. It's not a selling ground. We don't have vendors in. It's strictly for the end user community.
But actually, I'm not technically against security awareness. It's just, I've yet to see it done properly anywhere. The entire concept of it is outmoded, even in the first place. Sitting in a room and being talked at, for instance. Even the term is incorrect. Security training, we should be talking more about education, for instance. I know this is a bit like, calling your security awareness programs and training as wrong. It's a bit like calling your babies ugly. But somebody's got to do it. Okay? I am that man, I am that soldier. And there's a number of barriers that are in the way of this effective security awareness training. And the first one being training fatigue. Okay, it's quite simply put that there are so many trainings that the average employee has to go through. We're talking about not just security awareness training, but bribery act training and expenses training and how to use the training system training, things like that. And the best part is because there's so many things that have to be done on a yearly basis, they get clubbed together into compliance season to make it as cheap as possible. They throw out 6 of these courses, and it's not surprising that people take these courses with their iPods plugged in, just flicking next, 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 get to the end, ask for the cheat sheet from their friends to answer the 10 questions, job done, can I get on with my job now, please? So I think training fatigue is one of the biggest challenges here. If you look at your number of your security incidents that are logged in your company before, during and after security training, you should see some kind of change. But I would guarantee there's not a lot of change at all. Those USB keys are still being plugged in and handed around, and passwords are still being written down, and those phishing emails are still being clicked on, whatever happens. Then we've got the problem of retention. What's retention? Retention means the actual ability to hold on to these sticky facts that we're trying to give people. These guys have got, these people in their day jobs have got so much to do that all they're focused on is selling the product that your company produces, doing what it takes to get the job done. They don't have time to think about the security practices that you've very carefully tried to lay out to them to do this as securely as possible. They need to keep the customer happy. They need to keep the shareholder happy, and they need to keep them happy now. It's a very short-termist view, but unfortunately, that's how the businesses are run. And a traditional security education awareness program is not going to meet those goals whatsoever. And even the professional companies will often fall prey to this. There are companies out there who claim that they can reduce phishing click-throughs by 75%. What about those other 25%? They obviously really didn't get it. Okay, so you're spending thousands of pounds to reduce a click-through rate by 75%, but it only takes 1. And that's the point. You are expending a vast amount of energy for very little outcome.
30 seconds, Tom.
Say again?
30 seconds left.
25 now.
25. Day job gets in the way. If they need to send out a deliverable to the client, they will send it out one way or the other. They will use Dropbox. If IT's gone home for the day, they will do it. If printer's gone offline, keep printing, keep printing, keep printing until they find the printer where it does print on, and leave the printouts there until they're done. So really, an education awareness program is only going to work if it's tailored specifically to your people. And to be honest with you, that's not going to happen given the budget constraints that are in place for many, many people. The only thing you are getting out of your awareness program is a tick in your compliance box. And that's it. If you recognise that, then great. But many people think they're getting much more.
Or at least some people who get it. There's got to be that bit, you talk about the 75%, stopping it. That's an awful lot, percentage-wise, and I completely agree that one is the bad thing, but if you've got some people not doing the bad thing, surely there's a benefit.
Well, I think 75%. You pick up a good example, absolutely. But the point of a program like this is to get 100%. Surely. Surely we aim to not let anything. You have to aim. No. That's not what I'm saying.
No, that's really serious. Who's read the Mandiant report, APT1, or who's aware of how RSA got breached a couple of years back? And what was the common thing there?
Computers?
That's the closest thing I got to spearfishing. That's meant to be a spearfishing.
That's a big spear.
That is a big spear, that's what she said. Okay, no one tweet this, please.
I'm tweeting. I'm so tweeting.
No. Okay, what are we looking at? We're looking at no matter how many technical controls you have, you still end up getting breached by user at the end clicking on something that they shouldn't. Now, let's ignore all the USBs that they leave unplugged or plugged in. Let's ignore all the letting people tailgate you into the building. But let's just look at even this one aspect. And these cause some of the biggest breaches. It's almost like the butterfly effect. You click on something, you don't know how it's going to change the world. You click something here and something in China blows up. Or Russia. Well, yeah, at least they can't hack you, indeed. I'm trying to think what my second slide was. Another reason why we need to focus on user awareness. Now, I'm not saying technical controls aren't good or we shouldn't focus on putting in technical controls, but there's this aspect called risk compensation. It's how people adapt their behaviours on perceived risk. Putting seatbelts in cars has meant that more pedestrians have got injured on the roads. Cyclists who wear helmets find that cars pass a lot closer to them than cyclists who don't wear helmets. What does this mean? It means the more protection you put in place, people end up...
I'm just saying how happy it is that somebody's been reading my blog.
There's at least one.
It's an award winner.
So people will adapt their behaviour. So you can put more technical controls in place, but people's behaviour will adapt accordingly. Now, what some people say is that, well, look at other industries. Construction, for example, they've made safety a really good thing, and we can learn from that. Well, we can't. And there's a reason for that. A brick falling onto your head will always fall straight down onto your head, regardless of where it's made. A Chinese or Russian brick won't go that way and then come and hit you in the gut. This is how threats change. That's the nature of it. If security risks stayed the same, antivirus would still be very effective today. But it's not. And then touching upon a point that Tom raised is that when you do, now that we
You said you'd never show that photograph.
now that we all unanimously agree that awareness is important, it just needs to be engaging. It needs to be in a way that people actually remember it, not in a way that, you know, people, like Tom said, you click through and you forget about it. And that's all I've got to say.
So what I want you to imagine for a moment is that you're the marketing manager for a large chain of supermarkets. You've got a store in London, the store isn't doing very well. You need to run a campaign to bring more people to the store to spend more money. So how would you go about that? Any takers? Any marketing managers here?
People buy more stuff now.
It's a security meeting.
Find out what
Okay.
One
One of the things that you do is you start to look at, well, who is it that lives in the area? What are the demographics? Are we talking about double income, no kids? Are we talking about retired couples? Maybe there's students. Maybe there's large extended families. And then who out of those demographics, who is it that actually makes the decision? Who spends the money? Is shopping at the supermarket a family affair? Does dad do it? Does mum do it? Maybe the nanny does it. Then once you understand that, you look at, well, what are the preferences of those people? Who are we trying to appeal to? Do they want kosher food? Do they want organic food? Do they want to shop late on a Saturday? Do they want parking? Do they want a bus stop outside the supermarket? We've only touched on a few elements here, but you can see that there's a huge amount of research that would go into a campaign to change customer behaviour. With that in mind, I want you now to think about a security awareness campaign. How it's done commonly is you stick people in a room, lock them in for an hour, and you put up some posters. Now what I hope I've done with this is show you some of the differences in approaches. Because information security awareness at its heart is usually a very piss poor marketing campaign. And I've got a theory for this. The theory is that largely that's because it's been run as a monopoly. It's never had any competition. If it actually had to truly compete, we would have seen it die out years ago. That's why we still have the security awareness, lame-ass marketing campaign.
It sort of does have to compete with other issues, doesn't it?
Internally, yes, that's true. But then internally, it relies on a little bit of black box thinking because nobody really gets security outside of this room, do they? So we've still got shields up for a while until people get wise. What I want you to think about is, what are the big gaps between those two campaigns? The fundamental difference is an understanding of the audience. Who are we trying to talk to? What do they base their decisions on? Java just made a good point before, which seems to be the reoccurring theme in information security awareness. How do we make our information more appealing? The problem is far more fundamental than that. The problem is relevance. How do we pinpoint the key pieces of information that people use to make decisions on? That's not the same as, let's repackage 7799, sit them down and go through it one chapter at a time. That is picking out the individual pieces of knowledge that people are making decisions on. And where those individual pieces of knowledge are going wrong, we home in on them and correct them. So for example, there's a mistaken belief in small businesses that hackers don't target small business. That mistaken belief leads to a whole range of problematic behaviours with antivirus and patching. Sure, we can talk to these groups till the clouds come home about the importance of antivirus and patching, but if their behaviour is predicated on another false belief that we haven't touched on and addressed, our training is a waste of time. The only thing that we're really achieving out of it is using up our departmental budget. I'll go on to the next slide here, because this really is a scam. We have here the Information Security Awareness Pyramid Marketing Scheme. The thing about pyramid marketing schemes is the people at the top are always the best off, because they get to rain on everybody else. And when information security professionals were asked to come up with a model to help try and structure information security awareness, this is one of the artifacts they came up with. Now the interesting thing from a behavioural inference point of view is it doesn't tell us anything about people's behaviour, it doesn't predict it, it doesn't correlate any causes and effects. It's just a model where, hey look, great, information security people have designed a model and they put themselves at the top. Hooray! Am I against information security awareness training? Yes. Am I for influencing users to make safe decisions? Absolutely yes. The question we need to ask ourselves is what happens when a brand goes wrong? Does anyone know who Blackwater were? Is Blackwater around today? Did they try and fix their brand? They rebranded, I think they've rebranded twice now, if not 3 times. So the question is, do we try and rebrand information security awareness and actually move on, or do we try and repair what we've got? Because I would suggest that the information security awareness brand, as it's known, is indelibly polluted. As soon as people hear information security awareness, what they think of is these posters and lock-in sessions. I think the time has come to move on. I'm not sure what the term is, but it's not information security awareness.
The point that Geordie made earlier is actually a very personal one, and I'm a communications person, and actually this is all about communicating. Let's forget what the subject area is. This is about engaging people. And the reason I've put this slide up here is that, you know, obviously the horse isn't going to drink any water unless he has a desire to do so. And that's our role and responsibility when we're trying to engage people with security awareness. And the wording that we tend to use now within our organisation when we're talking to customers is, this is about protecting information. Now, when you use the word protection, it encourages people to think a little bit differently about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get our employees to do. The user community, I tend to think of spaghetti westerns because I really love them. And the user community, I think, is split into 3 quite nicely. The good, those people within the organisation who actually occasionally do the right thing. The bad, the malicious people who actually want to cause damage to the organisation or to steal. And then we've got the ugly, who are the oblivious. Those within the user community who actually have not a clue that their actions are causing risk to the organisation. Now, according to CIFAS, their 2012 Fraudscape survey, they said 78% of the inside of the fraud that's done within an organisation comes from within. So that's 75%. Either that's malicious or inadvertent. Now, as in the spaghetti western, the ugly, the oblivious, are the ones who actually caused the greatest damage and who actually were the ones that caused the most disruption. Now, the reason I put this up is what we tend to do with our current security awareness is we try and just do this blanket sheep dip approach, where actually my colleagues over the other side brought up some really good points around, do you know what, you have to make this relevant. They have to see the context as to why security is actually important to them. They have to care about it. Now, the one reason that training doesn't work is that we tend to do it without anything around it. We might have the odd poster around, but good security training is always associated with an awareness campaign that answers the why question. Why are we doing this? Why should I care? Why is this important to the company? That's why training doesn't work in its current context, but it can if it's packaged up properly. Now, I've put this up here because this kind of, for me, demonstrates that one size doesn't fit all, and what we need to do is be a little bit smarter about the user communities that we're trying to target. Looking at our high-risk communities are going to need one set of messages, and looking to the rest of the people whose risk is a lot lower is a different set of messages. This is all about communication and understanding your audience. The 3 R's, not reading, writing and arithmetic, the 3 R's are around right message, right context, right time. Timing is key when it comes to delivering training. If your user community understand why the actions that they take will have an impact on the organisation, what the consequences are of clicking on that link, of opening that attachment in the email, then you are giving them the opportunity to make an informed decision about their actions. Now, you can't deliver training once a year and hope that people are going to remember everything, because around that, as I said, you need to associate it with a concerted, good, robust communications programme that constantly reminds everybody, drops in front of them at the right time and says, hey, over here, have a look at this, this is why we want you to do this. The training piece will tell you how. So you need to get the why bit in first, engage your user community with the bit that says why this is important to you and the business. Then they will turn around and say, okay, show me how. That's how to run a good training programme.
And I'm going to say that security awareness training is completely and utterly worthless no matter how you do it. Firstly, because awareness is not understanding. You can be as aware as you like of the Data Protection Act or of ISO 27001 and still have not a clue what it's about. If your users had enough awareness to be able to manage and mitigate InfoSec risks, they would be InfoSec professionals and you would be out the job. And nobody wants that. So, no, don't train them. You'll spend 3 years training them to the level, or more, the level that you're at, and they won't be doing their jobs while they're doing that, and then they'll put you out of yours. So, reason 1 why training is a bad idea. I've got more reasons, they're on my phone. Okay, and because of that lack of understanding that goes with awareness, unless you do the 3-year course to bring them up to InfoSec professional level, they're going to make bad decisions and things are going to go wrong. In all of the training programs I've seen, the training has been an attempt at a bandage over lack of understanding of business process, poor recruitment procedures, insecure systems design and build, bashing and bodging stuff together, fingers crossed that it'll all hold together, but nobody really has a clue exactly how the system's working and why. No documentation or documentation not up to date. And you're relying on your poor end users to cover that up for you by being InfoSec professionals and making complex risk management decisions about threats they have no idea about, and it would take too long to train them about. No, I think that we're doing our users an injustice. Build secure systems by design, map your business processes, understand what they are, tighten up your recruitment vetting to counteract the insider threat, if a disgruntled employee poses a threat to your business, don't disgruntle the employee if you can possibly help it. Yeah. We want gruntling, ladies and gentlemen. Don't hire psychos that are going to post your password on Twitter. And so those are my reasons to not to do security awareness training, because it doesn't matter what it looks like, how engaging it is, how pretty it is, how well you deliver it, how many cream eggs you throw at people. It's not going to help. It's a bandage over the gaping wound of people not doing other stuff properly, see, business process, systems design, and for that reason it is doomed to fail.
So it's our fault then?
Sorry?
It's our fault.
Yeah, well no,
That's where you get
it's not our fault.
everybody's going, isn't it?
We are trying to roll a stone uphill forever. We've been tasked with an impossible job in regard to user awareness training. We should be focusing our attention on secure
it's not
builds.
that. We're just not doing it right.
No, I disagree. I think we've been given a task that no human being could possibly achieve. I think we should be focusing on secure design, building not having security awareness as a bolt-on to other stuff. Security awareness in itself as a concept outside of other business processes shouldn't be the case. Business process should include good practice.
You mean security awareness?
No, I don't.
It's our fault.
I mean paranoia from the ground up.
Brilliant. The best part about going last is I feel like I'm coming onto the battlefield just to bayonet the wounded. You guys have already done my job for me. There's not really much I can add. I've heard 4 arguments for training so far. Sorry, Georgie, I didn't get anything you were talking about. Totally lost me on that one. All I saw was NIST something. That's just the way that you're delivering it. And so, I mean, Rowena, one of the things you're saying is that you can teach people to be InfoSec professionals in 3 years, but people don't have to be InfoSec professionals in order to understand secure practices. If I buy a car, I don't need to be a mechanic to drive it. All I need to know is that when that red engine warning light comes on, I take it to someone qualified to fix it.
Yeah.
So, Tom, you actually mentioned this. Like I said, you did my talk for me. If we actually just take the word security out of training, what are we left with? Training, which is education. So you basically say it's educate. Well, training. Okay.
Training's about competency. Can I use Outlook or PGP?
But you're learning something.
Yeah. Just because you learn something doesn't mean you change your behaviour.
Oh,
I know loads of people that learned about lung cancer and they still smoke. Yeah. They learned about speed camps.
Okay. Well, here you go. Have an egg.
Is that the poisonous one?
Yes, these are the side laxatives, so you hadn't missed that. We switched them earlier. I'm saying there's no such thing as a bad student, there's only a bad teacher. And it's about the way you teach courses. You hear often hear teachers, in the old days say, this is easy, how can you not understand it? And you say the same thing to users. You say, this is so simple, how can you not understand? Change your password, randomise it. Yeah, I've actually done a lot of work with special needs children, and they don't speak like we speak. You have to teach them in a different way. So, you use things like Makaton, you use a lot of symbols when you're talking with children, because they don't learn in traditional ways. And we're trying to fit, everything that we know about security, and we're just trying to blast it out, as if it's up to us to teach everyone else how to do it. Now, I mean, when you're actually doing, when you're actually going through the business process, do you actually say, how can security help the business? Or do you actually say, this is the way we're going to do it, yes or no? So we accept, okay, yeah, we are an enabler, we're here to help the business. How can security help the business? So when we're trying to teach people, why do we not say, okay, you know what? We're not actually that good at marketing. Why do we think we are good at marketing? So let's get marketing to help us deliver the message. Why is it on us to deliver the message? You know, why do we not involve the qualified people to do it? Exactly. That's what I'm asking.
People don't understand anything.
They
can sell anything.
When it comes to social engineering,
People will learn if you give them the right incentive.
it's not always incentive, it's a method of teaching.
People don't care.
Yeah.
They care about something.
They have the right incentive. They
Why should they?
So we just give money to people to learn?
Wrap it in the stuff they care about.
Exactly. You've got to find out what does it mean to them. You're not going to teach the design, call centres, the staff that pay by the hour. You're not going to teach them the same way you're going to teach people, whose salaries there, who are actually going to get fired for not doing their job properly. The call centre, they can just walk into another job most of the time.
call centre people, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, you know what I mean. The sort of, the part-time
Are you
staff.
saying you should make it relevant?
You have to make it relevant. Yeah, there's no. Well, like Bernadette said, there's no one size fits all, and this is one.
So you have to tailor your training for every single role that you have in your company.
No, you don't. I'll answer that.
Every single
Even though I
person.
don't have a microphone in my hand, but no, you don't. We tailor our messages in a very different way. We decided last year that we'd write a whole new set, and what we actually focus on is nothing to do with their organisation at all. We focus on the personal user. So when we write some comms, and we did some stuff around looking after passwords, we wrote the password thing around home banking. Right? They got it. It was nothing, we didn't mention work at all. We talked about passwords and how you need to look after them and why it's important for you individually at home. And we did a whole series, like 30 different topics here, and with that we did the same thing with everyone, and we didn't mention our organisation, our policies or anything, ever. And they got it.
I think that's really important.
Do you just want
The idea of
mention
that
those
is-
at the correct?
Did everyone hear that at the back? So, yeah, it's just over here when we can't see it. That's not why
London Pride.
People take on board. People take on board the stuff which is relevant to them rather than the organisation that's actually making a good training.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, we've done a similar thing with Facebook, but a lot of our salespeople, they related to Facebook rather than home banking, because it was more important to them. SpongeBob
Use the channels that are already there.
Exactly.
Look at what people are doing anyway and use those channels. They watch TV, they go to the cinema, they watch this, they enjoy Facebook. Do that.
You don't leave your wallet on the table in a pub, right?
Yeah.
Or your phone, or your iPad. That was another one of my messages. I'm going to throw that in for free there. They're about 50 quid each, or one bit.
Then we can line them all up there to the shop.
Control it.
No, these are all good arguments. This is great. I'm just thinking,
You don't have to do it.
these guys are doing the job for us. So how do we best go about training awareness in a diverse company with diverse cultures? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank goodness for that.
What we do in our organisation, we actually go and speak to internal comms and say, okay guys, how do you do this? How do you engage with the different sort of sets of people across the organisation? Show us a programme that works really well, and let's replicate that, or let's piggyback onto that one. Let's blend security into the business programmes that are going on already, because what you want it to do is not be seen as something outside the business. It needs to be integrated and started to see as business as usual. I mean, that guy is talking about the personal thing. We did a really interesting piece where we got a comedian in to talk about identity theft. He'd been a victim, and he had lost nearly everything, and it took him nearly 2 years to recover from that. The underpinning message to that is...
And he still had a sense of humour.
It did. He's made a lot of money out of it, actually. The story. But the thing being is, the underpinning message there was, this is why we care about our information and why our customers expect us to look after their information, because you expect the same from the companies that you deal with. Make it personal. Take it outside and relate to things outside the workplace, online banking, shopping online, your children, all of those sorts of things. Catch people on an emotional level and they'll connect with it.
Can I tell you?
Sorry, can I get the sauces?
Let the award-winning Javad go first.
So Andy touched upon this point that we're not the be-all and end-all of everything security. So we know what the message we want users to adopt or what behaviour we want to change. we just sometimes struggle in how do we actually affect that change. So we can look to other people or other examples to see how they happened. And a good example is recycling. 15, 20 years ago, Greenpeace were a bunch of hippies on a dinghy trying to block an oil tanker. And my man over there knows it.
The man over there was on the dinghy.
Excellent. But today, in nearly everyone's office, you've probably got about 10 different bins lined up against the wall. Paper goes in here, crisp packet goes in here, tins go in here. And how did that change happen? Greenpeace themselves, they were trying it, but then they got the backing of some big marketing company. I think Saatchi ran a campaign for them, and they had good publicity. And that's what got the message out to the masses, and that's what caused them to change their behaviour. And even this morning on the tube, I saw a poster saying, "I recycle for my future generations." You know, it's trying to tie something into something personal that attaches it to them. Your marketing team or a good marketing company will work with you to understand your individual company's culture. And every company is different. Global organisations are really messy because in one part they'll have a call centre which is like, you know, completely different cultures. In other, say everyone's like, you know, flip-flop wearing, iMac carrying people. So you need to like find out how do you tailor the message that you know what behaviours you want them to change. You work with someone who's experienced in how to deliver that message, and that's my point of view on that.
I think you're right. The advertising and marketing agencies have got decades of experience in this. They've got decades of experience in this. You know, they're producing these sticky, bite-sized piece of information that you retain for months, years. I can still remember a jingle when I was touring Australia in 1989.
So why aren't there good TV ads on security?
There's no money in it.
Yeah.
There's no incentives.
Exactly. And nobody's asking for it either.
Nobody wants.
Who watches ads?
Exactly. And I think this is where the arguments
If we're
diverge.
losing 27 billion a year, then I think there's some money in it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, not for them.
Yeah, not in the training. the money's not there in the training budgets of people's. That's of people's.
Can I make a comment here? I mean, I'm hearing things like we need to change behavior. We're talking about education. We're talking about secure by design. And I try to apply this analogy, right? Can we actually change behavior? If today I want to change behavior of my son, of something which he does again and again, can I change that behavior overnight by doing something?
Incentive.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. So in terms of changing the behavior, I think this is a persistent, relentless effort in terms of reinforcing that message again and again. And when I say secure by design, when I look at a new generation which is coming into the workforce, the way they behave, the way they live their life on social media, the way they even interact with each other, I think we need to change and we need to start thinking about, just like we think about security by design, it needs to build as part of the education curriculum. Because then you will be building that behaviour when they join the
I would agree with that, right up until you said education curriculum. Secure by design, we need to change their behaviour. What we need to do is provide very narrow parameters and no wiggle room in which they can behave. Don't give them the choice about how to behave, because they will choose wrong.
Stifling constriction, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Necessary.
Because you think you're safe.
And died. Darwinism, well, you know, there is a degree of economic Darwinism in people not taking security precautions and then getting their bank accounts wiped out. How quickly do you think they'll learn from that?
That's not who
But what I'm saying is that behaviour needs to change, yes, but you can't persuade people to change their behaviour.
You can if you give them an incentive. You can if you give them an incentive.
And agencies all over the world sell stuff every day.
Pay them.
I think that what we're missing here is a deal
Exactly,
with
different
realism.
incentive.
We're trying to measure the success of awareness programs based on a real short-term mentality. You can look at any other campaign at changing cultural attitudes across the community. It takes 10, 20 years. Okay. So if we continue to measure the success of our programs based upon that shortism, we will always find ourselves asked the question, did it deliver the results?
Forget even about security awareness.
I'll give you a sort of an example from the research I've been doing. Back in 1850, a couple got divorced okay? And they got divorced because she wrote down in her diary the fact she was having an affair, right? No, well, yeah. she had certain controls in place around her diary, but her husband still got through to it. And it's interesting because when people look at that, they think, well, it just affected the two of them. Well, the actual end implication of that was that resulted in a change in divorce laws, and every divorce since is trackable back to that one security incident. Okay, right? Now, Mary, the cultural attitudes that we need to change will not change in a year, 2 years, 3 years, or the period of time that you work at a single company. And what we need to do as a profession is to be sort of breaking down, how we're measuring ourselves and how it contributes to our own careers, and thinking about the bigger picture here. Okay, we need to be thinking about 5, 10, 20 years from now. And we just need to recognise and get the message across to those people who are investing in it. It ain't going to produce the miracle this year.
Interesting point is everybody here, almost everybody security professional here understands we need to do that. We need to do it for years. We need to spend more money. The point is how to get that money.
But those employees are not here this year, next year.
But
we can't
they're
train
somewhere.
them untrained. Who else is?
No, but see, that's what we do now. That's something else we're getting wrong within the security profession. When we train people within the jobs, okay, they go out. If they go to another company, they take that knowledge. If they go back home, they take that knowledge. Our job is not just to train the people within our companies; is to train society so we can more effectively manage risk.
What about the government? What about the Green Cross Code, teaching people how to cross roads?
That's what it's
Why are we responsible for it?
But that's right, and that's why you've got things like Get Safe Online. I do agree that government could be putting a lot more money into it, but the fact of the matter is the government doesn't have the money. And actually, if we're going, when the government talks about managing the risk of the economic prosperity of this country, okay, what it means is actually each one of the companies out there protecting the risk to the cash flow and profitability from security breaches. And if each one of us and the companies that we represent do that, then the actual risk to our economic prosperity as a nation state will be a lot more effectively managed, and the safety of the citizen will be a lot more effectively managed. So I think we just need to be realising that our responsibility isn't just to the companies that we work within, but to the society that we benefit from.
I agree.
We're also working from the perspective that people actually care about this. If you take young people, they are getting education in schools, they are learning about information security in some guise or other. They have to do it as part of their projects, part of their assessments, part of their GCSEs. I know.
Maybe in your school.
I've made sure that we get good results, right? So they do learn that now. But for those where we're perhaps a little bit closer to it, and our children will understand why we care and what have you. There are plenty who will go on Facebook and they really don't mind that everybody knows everything about them. They don't see the consequences in the same way. They're not looking at a society where they want to protect their information because they want to share. And unless we understand that they want to share it, it doesn't matter what we say about, protecting that information. They're not on the same page as us at all. And I think, we have to understand that when they then come into the corporate but when they come into the corporate environment, we care about protecting connectors and much more technical aspects of our business. But they've then got to be educated from saying, I can go out there, I can do anything, I can go anywhere, I can communicate with who I like. Why are you stopping me? I don't get it. Your job is to protect it. You're the professional. You make sure I don't do anything that I can't do. Otherwise, it's a free rein because this technology is there for me to use. I have a right. I was born in a time when a mobile phone was sitting there. I was born in a time when an iPad was sitting there for me to use. For us, where you're older, all these things are kind of new. We learn about them. We understand the security risks as they've changed. But that's not the same, and we have to wise up to where they're coming from.
If they're able.
It's a different place.
Only if they're able.
But they do, and they do. And things go wrong, and they learn. And they learn if it's not from themselves, they learn from what happens to their friends. And when things go wrong, what their friends do, when the police get involved and all sorts of stuff. It's there for them to learn from. But they still don't necessarily understand that they are as vulnerable as their friends.
So do we think then we can market or educate or train, whatever? Because it's, you know, we're
There
going
is
from
something about
communication to marketing.
education, and it's not about training to be a moral or
Alright.
justice.
Two quick points from me. One of the centre points of this whole conversation is it a tweak to what we do now and a little bit more money to do more of what we're doing now, or is fundamentally, are we approaching this in a way that is inefficient and ineffective? Now, central to this question, actually, we keep coming back to this secure by design. We as an industry, we've spent decades talking about password complexity. And if it wasn't for most of our systems controlling password complexity, some huge majority of users will be using password 1. When some of the big password breaches came out last year with LinkedIn and Yahoo and other places, what did we see? Really crazily stupid passwords. After
But why do
decades.
websites let you use password 1?
And that's my point. That's my point. If an information security professional designed a plane, they would leave a button on the dash saying, crash the plane. And this is a serious point because it cuts to the economics of this whole conversation. Is that we have spent, as an industry, millions and millions of pounds on the topic of password complexity when it could have been solved at a system level far more effectively and efficiently.